millionaire named Julian West was walking through the park late one evening, an unusual choice for a man who preferred control and routine. But after a surprise site inspection at a remote property, he needed to clear his mind. As he walked, the city lights blurred in the distance, and a chill breeze whispered through the trees. That's when he saw her. She was lying motionless on the wet grass, half hidden in the shadows, pale, shivering, and barely breathing. Julian knelt beside her, gently touching her ice-cold hand. Without thinking, he wrapped his scarf around her shoulders and draped his coat over her trembling body. "Miss, wake up. Can you hear me?" he whispered. Her lips moved faintly. "Please, don't take me back there." Julian's heart clenched. He didn't know who she was or what she meant, but the fear in her voice was real. He carried her to his car and drove straight to his mansion. His staff looked on in shock, but he waved them off. "Guest room. Call Dr. Mason. Tell him it's urgent." Julian, CEO of West Global Hospitality, was a man of power and precision. Yet that night, nothing about him felt in control. The stranger in his arms had stirred something unexpected. Dr. Mason arrived quickly and examined her carefully. "She's dehydrated, bruised, but there's no life-threatening injury. Possibly emotional trauma or mild amnesia. Keep her warm, fed, and calm." Julian stayed by her side, quietly watching her sleep. Something about her tugged at him, not just her fragility, but a kind of silent strength. As he adjusted her blanket, he noticed something beneath her hairline, a small, subtle tattoo. His breath caught. It resembled a modified version of the logo for Caldwell Global Travel, Julian's biggest rival, a company known for unethical practices hidden behind glossy brochures. What were the chances this woman, clearly running from something, bore that mark? Was she a trap, a pawn sent to sabotage him, or just someone trying to escape? As dawn broke, Julian remained in the armchair, still watching. She had turned his world upside down, without saying a word. When she finally woke, her voice was raspy. "Thank you." Julian offered her water and food. "Can you tell me your name?" A pause. "Just Ava." "Do you remember what happened?" She shook her head. "Flashes, running, a car, yelling, cold. You were found in the park near my property, unconscious. I brought you here. You're safe." "Why would you help a stranger?" she asked softly. "Because you needed help," he replied simply. Over the next few days, Ava recovered slowly in the guest suite. The house staff adored her. She was kind, quiet, always thankful. She helped with chores, read books, even journaled in the solarium. But Julian remained cautious. The tattoo lingered in his thoughts. Then, on the fourth day, he saw it again. She passed his study, her hair shifting just enough to reveal the mark. Julian stood abruptly. "Ava!" he called. "Your neck. May I see it?" Confused, she moved her hair aside. There it was. The same symbol, no doubt. Julian pulled a binder from his shelf, opening it to a page clipped from a trade journal. A logo, stylized, familiar. This is from a program under Caldwell Global. Eva's face went pale. "I didn't know. I mean, I don't remember. Maybe I volunteered. I hate it." "Why?" "Because every time I see it, I feel ashamed." Julian's chest tightened. The rawness in her voice shattered his suspicions, but not completely. He needed answers. Quietly, he reached out to his old contacts, looking into her past. Eva, unaware, continued to bring warmth into his life, helping in the kitchen, laughing with the chef, feeding stray cats in the garden. She never asked for anything, but doubt still lived in the corners of his mind. One rainy afternoon, everything changed. She spotted a man with a camera near the property. Panicked, she ran, not to the house, but into the woods. Mrs. Glenn, the housekeeper, called Julian in distress. He didn't think. He just ran. Julian found her at the edge of a lake, soaked and shivering, sitting alone on a bench as the storm raged around her. "I should have known," she said, without looking at him. "You were watching me." He didn't speak right away. His breath came in quiet, deliberate exhales. "Maybe not you," she continued, "but someone you sent. I had to be sure," Julian finally said. Eva let out a bitter laugh. "Sure of what? That I'm dangerous? That I'm lying?" He remained silent. "I trusted you," she whispered. "But people like me don't get rescued. We get used." She turned toward him, eyes filled with hurt. "I don't even know who I am, but for a moment, your kindness felt real. I let myself believe I deserved it, but I can't be your question mark." Julian stepped forward. "No," she said firmly, voice cracking. "I don't want to hurt you. but I won't let myself be hurt again either." She walked away, disappearing into the woods, and for the first time, Julian wondered, was he afraid of danger? Or of falling in love? The next morning, a contact in Singapore sent Julian the final piece of the puzzle. A press photo, Eva Raines, standing beside Jason Caldwell, the CEO of Julian's biggest rival. Her face was familiar now. She had once been Caldwell's public liaison, the visible heart of the Harmony Trails program. She had smiled in those staged videos, had written blog posts full of hope, but behind the scenes, Caldwell's empire was built on exploitation. Eva had vanished months ago. Now, it all made sense. The fear, the avoidance of hospitals, the shame when she saw the tattoo. When Julian found her in the garden later that day, she was touching the petals of a new rose bloom. Eyes soft but guarded. She looked up and saw his face. "You found something," she said quietly. Julian nodded. "I know who you are now." She lowered her eyes. "Then you probably also know why I tried so hard to forget. Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. "Because I didn't want to be that girl anymore. The one who smiled beside a monster, who helped him sell lies." She took a shaky breath. "At first, I believed in it. Jason said we were building something good, and I wanted to believe that so badly. But I started noticing the truth. Kids working behind the scenes, money that never reached villages. When I asked questions, he called me naive. When I pushed harder, he turned cruel." Her voice dropped. "He never hit me, but he didn't have to. Words can cage you too." Julian clenched his jaw. "Do you have anything? Evidence?" Eva nodded. "I copied files, emails, contracts. I was going to send them to a journalist, but someone tipped him off, so I ran." He exhaled slowly. "You were brave to leave." "I'm not brave," she said. "I'm just tired." He looked at her for a long moment. "You're not alone anymore." But fate wasn't done with them. That afternoon, Jason Caldwell appeared on national media, calm, polished, with a smug smile. "Unfortunately," he said, "Mrs. Eva Raines, a former employee, disappeared months ago with company data. Now she's conveniently living with my business rival, Julian West." He let the implication sink in. This is not coincidence. This is corporate sabotage. The headlines exploded. Caldwell accuses rival of harboring corporate spy. Who is Eva Raines? Heroine or hacker? Julian West's mystery woman. Eva watched in horror as her past became front-page gossip. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I never meant to drag you into this." Julian took her hand. "You didn't." "They did." She looked at him, eyes wide. "They'll tear you apart for protecting me." "Let them try," he said, and for the first time, Eva didn't feel like she was running anymore, but the pressure mounted. Shareholders grew nervous. Investors backed away. Julian's board called an emergency meeting. "We respect your personal life," one executive said stiffly, "but the brand must remain clean. Your relationship with Ms. Raines is compromising our image," added another. "You need to choose." The CFO was blunt. "Publicly distance yourself, or we find new leadership." Julian didn't argue. He simply stood up, buttoned his jacket, and walked out. That night, Eva found him alone on the terrace, staring out over the skyline. "You should let me go," she said softly. He didn't turn around. "I never wanted to be a liability." "You're not," he said. "I'm chaos. People hate me. They hate that I survived. They think I'm using you. And I don't even know what I'm doing anymore." Julian turned toward her. "Then let me remind you." He took her hands. "You reminded me why I started this. Why I built hotels beside villages, not over them. Why I turned down bribes and shortcuts. You reminded me what it means to care, to choose what's right." Tears filled her eyes. "You don't need me to protect you," he said, "but I need you to remind me how to live with purpose." 1 week later, Julian and Eva arrived at the International Humanitarian Gala in Geneva. Cameras flashed. Whispers swept across the crowd as they entered hand in hand. Eva wore a midnight blue gown, elegant and understated. Julian's presence was calm but commanding. The room buzzed with anticipation as he stepped up to the podium to deliver the keynote address. "I was told," he began, his voice steady, "that bringing this woman with me tonight might reflect poorly on this organization." A murmur rippled through the crowd. He continued, "Eva Raines was once part of a company that betrayed everything this room claims to stand for. But when she discovered the truth, she didn't stay silent. She walked away from privilege and security, and she did it alone." He glanced at her, eyes soft. "And I, someone who built a company on ideals, was too afraid to stand beside her. Not anymore." The silence in the room grew still. "She doesn't need my protection," Julian said. But I need her courage, her clarity, because doing the right thing isn't always safe, but it's always worth it. He lifted his chin. So yes, I am proud to stand with her. And if that offends anyone's brand, then maybe your values were never real to begin with. Applause started slowly, then swelled into a wave. Julian returned to Eva's side. She stood. He pulled her into an embrace. In that moment, surrounded by judgment and flashing lights, they didn't feel judged. They felt free. That evening, Eva sent the encrypted file. It was just 74 megabytes, but it held the weight of her past, emails, payments, falsified charity reports, and damning internal memos, proof of how Caldwell Global had hidden exploitation behind polished campaigns. She hesitated before clicking send. Julian placed his hand gently over hers. You're not alone, he said. With a deep breath, she sent it. Within hours, the media firestorm reignited. But this time, the arrows flew in the right direction. Whistleblower releases evidence against Caldwell Global. Humanitarian program exposed as front for exploitation. Jason Caldwell under international investigation. Jason's smile vanished from the airwaves. He was summoned for questioning. Investors pulled out. His PR team scrambled with hollow statements. But the damage was done. Eva's name was no longer a scandal. It was a reckoning. But truth has its own price. Within days, 3 of Julian's Asian investment partners quietly backed out. Publicly, they blamed market conditions. Privately, the message was clear. Too controversial, too connected to Eva. Shareholder confidence wavered. Julian's advisors urged a rebrand, a pivot to Western markets, but he knew that wouldn't be enough, so he made the choice himself. He stepped down as CEO. In a brief, dignified press release, he announced he'd be shifting focus to local, community-based tourism initiatives. Then he disappeared from the city. With Eva, they retreated to the mountains, where mist rolled through the trees and the air smelled of pine. There, nestled in quiet, stood Julian's first ever property, a rustic eco-lodge, long abandoned. Now, it became their home, their reset. They lived simply. Mornings started with coffee on the porch. Afternoons were for walks through the forest. Evenings ended with books beside the fire. For the first time in years, Julian slept without anxiety, and Eva began to dream again. Still, even in peace, memories lingered. One stormy night, Eva stood on the porch, wrapped in an oversized sweater, watching rain streak across the valley. Julian joined her, their silence shared. If you could go back, she asked softly, to before the park, would you still stop for me? He turned to her, eyes clear. If I could live it all again, he said, I'd still walk the same path, even if the world didn't choose us. He stepped closer, cupping her face in his hands. I choose you, Eva, even if the world never does. She leaned into him, and for a long moment, they just held each other. Outside, the rain fell harder, but around them, it felt like something was being washed clean. In the quiet mountain lodge, Julian and Eva began rebuilding, not just their lives, but something far greater. The lodge, once the seed of Julian's luxury empire, transformed into the heart of a new purpose. Together, they launched a program for women who had faced hardship, survivors of abuse, widows, and single mothers who had once been invisible within the polished world of tourism. Julian taught them business basics, how to manage guest stays, design local tours, build ethical partnerships. But it was Eva who gave the project its soul. She stood in front of each group, never claiming to be perfect, only honest. I used to stand beside powerful men, she told them. I ran from their shadows. I thought losing everything would break me, but it only stripped away what was never real. Her voice resonated. The women listened, and slowly, they began to believe they were more than what the world had taken from them. Outside the lodge, her story reached even further. Her memoir, The Quiet Exit, was published and touched thousands. But it wasn't the reviews that moved Eva. It was the letters. From women in shelters, from girls who had grown up in silence, from people who wrote simply, "You made me feel seen." Julian watched her bloom, stronger, freer, and more radiant than ever, and he realized that his love for her had deepened into something more, admiration. So on the morning of their program's official launch, beneath pine trees and a banner that read, "New Roots," Julian stepped forward to address the small crowd of locals, volunteers, and guests. This lodge, he began, was where I learned how to build a business. But today, we begin building something greater, community. He looked toward Eva, a soft smile playing on his lips. And before we begin, I'd like to ask someone very important to join me. Eva's eyes widened in surprise as he held out his hand. She stepped forward, her heart pounding. The day I met Eva, he said, she looked like someone who didn't want to be found, but I found myself the moment I found her. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. As he opened it, sunlight broke through the trees. I don't want a brand or a legacy, he said quietly. I just want to be the man who walks beside you through whatever life brings. He knelt. Will you marry me? Tears filled Eva's eyes. Yes, she whispered. They embraced as the crowd cheered, not just for the proposal, but for the journey these two had taken. A journey not of perfection, but of courage and choice. That night, beneath a sky full of stars, Eva rested her head on Julian's shoulder. Did you plan all of it? She asked. He kissed her forehead. I planned a very different life, he murmured, but then I found you, and in that quiet, nothing else was needed. A year passed. The world had grown softer for them. Between cliffs and sea, on a private stretch of shoreline, stood a handcrafted wooden house surrounded by wildflowers. They called it the Driftwood Home, a small retreat of 5 cabins, built with intention and care. It wasn't about luxury, it was about peace. Eva and Julian lived in the main house. The ocean greeted them each morning, and stars watched over them each night. Eva's belly had begun to swell with early motherhood. She moved with a gentle grace, often resting her hands over the life growing inside her. Julian, meanwhile, wrote not business plans, but pages of reflection and truth. His manuscript, Sustainable by Heart, was nearly done. It wasn't about profit, it was about people. He wrote about forgotten villages, overlooked workers, about the moment everything changed. Not the day he closed his first billion-dollar deal, but the night he found Eva, lost in the rain. Eva spent her days in the herb garden and her afternoons answering letters from readers. She had also launched a small podcast, Voices Between the Lines, where she interviewed survivors of emotional and corporate abuse, helping them reclaim their stories. She never called herself a healer, but to those who listened, her voice felt like one. Life wasn't fast anymore, but it was rich. One rainy afternoon, just as the tide began to rise, Eva sat curled on a porch swing with a steaming mug of peppermint tea. Julian joined her, throwing a warm blanket over both their laps. They didn't speak for a while. The soft rain tapped rhythmically against the roof, and the scent of wet wood filled the air. Inside their cozy living room, the fireplace crackled. On the mantel sat their most cherished photo, a candid shot taken the night of the storm, when Eva had nearly walked away. In the image, they were soaked, holding each other tightly in the garden. Rain blurred the frame, but their embrace was crystal clear. Eva stared at the photo with a wistful smile. I used to think I was just a wanderer, she said quietly, a traveler with no destination, someone who didn't belong anywhere. Julian turned to her, and I was a man building places for others to stay, without ever creating one where I could rest my own heart. She smiled, her eyes glistening. Funny, isn't it, how we both thought we were lost? And all the while, he murmured, we were walking toward each other. The wind picked up slightly, rustling the trees. Julian stood, holding out his hand. Come with me. Eva raised an eyebrow, but took it. They walked slowly down a stone path past the cabins, toward a new wooden archway overlooking the sea. Hanging from it was a hand-carved sign, the place we stayed. Beneath it sat a bench, freshly built. On the backrest, words were etched into the wood. Found in the rain, chosen in the calm. Eva touched the carving, overwhelmed. It's for you, Julian said softly. For us. For every moment we chose to stay, even when the world told us to run. She sat down, and he joined her. Together, they watched the waves roll in, salt mist brushing their skin. Julian took her hand and said quietly, whatever comes, this child, this life, I'm not going anywhere. Eva leaned her head against his shoulder. Neither am I. And just like that, without grand headlines or applause, they had everything. The world didn't need to understand them, because they understood each other, and that was enough. As the sun dipped low, casting gold across the sea, Julian kissed her temple and whispered, "We didn't start like a fairy tale." Eva smiled and finished the thought. "But I'd take this ending over any crown or castle, because it's real," she said. "Because we built it together." And together, they stayed, softly, fiercely, completely. At last, they were home.